Hello everybody. This is a tutorial on your quantitative assignment as part of the research methods in the social sciences class. Now, the core principles of a research paper in this case is the quantity of something, where we get the word quantitative, or something you calculate. So what's unique about your particular project, it's something you have done, data collection you have created, results and analysis that come from you, and then an analysis and conclusion about these numbers and about this thing you count. So you can't simply cut and paste somebody's data from somewhere else to here. And you really can use previous data from elsewhere, archival research, to create a case for what you're doing now. So your paper now could be a part of a longitudinal research of other cases over time. So this is longitudinal. But in your case, you're going to need to have unique data to your particular element. The quantitative assignment must contain these components. First, a research inquiry question. It may have been adapted from your original research question, and that's perfectly fine. But at this point, you will have nailed down what it is your paper is trying to inquire about and question. The second part is methodology. Using very dense detail, give us specifics of how you are going to do this experiment so we can replicate it. If you remember the Man on the Mountain project story, there was a mountain here, and then there was the ocean here. In all three cases, they're really studying the same type of thing, but what allows the project to move forward was, in the first case, methodology was done in dense detail, and so someone could actually walk up the mountain and replicate the experiment again. So you want to answer what data was collected, who, what, where was it done, what's the N number? This is important. N equals the number of respondents. Then how did you input and output this material? In your case, it'll be Excel. Others might use SPSS or other types of Stata, other types of software. But in your case, you'll be using Excel. Then you're going to have, thirdly, results. The numbers from your specific data. So this is not numbers you're picking up from somebody else, but what did you study? And then finally, the fourth component, your analysis of it. So let's work through this. First, counting something. There's a few ways to think about this. First is a frequency. A frequency is how frequently, how often did it happen? How many incidents are there of a specific social phenomenon? So for instance, how many people walked through a door? How many people stopped at a stoplight? How many walked around in this garden? How much wind was blowing, and how did it affect the way people walked? Or how did it affect the trees around you? So frequency is one way to look at count something. Second, a tabulation. How many are there of a certain physical aspect? What about age? What about gender, height, the color of a car that drove by, or cars? Or one interesting student studied the steps in a sidewalk from one place to another in Harlem, where she actually counted those squares that you see, which give you a distance of how far it would walk. Or you come into this yard here, you could count the number of trees there are in this neighborhood, or even in this yard, how many times it loses its leaves, and so on and so forth. So frequency and a tabulation chart. Then there's respondent data. Respondent data is using a survey, such as a Likert scale, a yes-no to something, or a continuum between extremes, to get people's numbered responses onto a survey. This is different than a qualitative survey where you're asking people questions how they feel about something or what meaning do they attach to something. What you're interested in here is in actual numbers of things. A good illustration of using both tabulation and frequency and respondent was one of your colleagues' projects on a Kohl's store in Long Island. What he did is he decided to study who goes in the exit door versus the entrance door at a Kohl's department store on a busy Saturday shopping. Now this is pretty mundane kind of stuff, but he recognized that I could get all my data and get a snapshot in 4 hours, right? It was really 2 hours, sitting in this parking lot in my car. So the first thing he did, he had to find a spot where there was an entrance and an exit door in the same store, and it was marked. And there was no possible way to not be able to go through both doors. So there was none of this, oh, you can only go through the exit or entrance door like you have in some stores. In this case, it was very much entrance and exit. You could go in whichever door, it simply just had a sign. He was interested in looking at a very simple comparative. How many people go in the entrance door versus the exit door? A good comparative. And from where do they come in the parking lot? So he sat there with a tabulation sheet like this, and on one side he had entrance, on the other side he had exit, and then he counted 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 6, 7, 8, 5. You see what he's doing? He's tabulating on these both sides the number of people going in through the entrance door or the exit door. But as he's sitting there getting a little bit bored about the whole thing, recognizing there's other types of quantitative data he can gather simultaneously. So he started marking down age, gender, because he was interested in seeing what types of people are going through these doors. Then he thought of another one, which is social behavior, which is really frequency in regards to which direction were they going into the door and how were they going into the door. So he started measuring these things. The result of the Kohl's store experiment was this, and ladies in your 20-something, this is ratifies what all us guys knows, is every single time there was a young woman in a crowd with people, be it with the elders, be it with their moms, be it with their little kids, be it with a boyfriend, a husband, whatever the case might be, if there was somebody in their 20s, they always went through the door first. Second, they always went through whichever door was the closest. So the signs don't matter. What matters is I got to get in through the door first. Be it is that I'm leading the way for everybody, or I'm making sure the kids come along. So we had a great social phenomena out of a 2-hour intensive frequency tabulation and respondent count done simultaneously at a Kohl's store. And of course, the idea here would be as if it happens at this Kohl's store, it probably happens at most other stores of this kind. And I would beg it bears itself out with other data that's been done. Now, when you're counting something and you're using respondents, don't forget what's called the N number. You'll see this in academic articles. The N equals the number of respondents. So the number of respondents to a survey or the number of people you observed. So make sure you put an N number, because if you have an N20 is very different than N5, and N2040 is different than N10. We need to know what the level is of your survey. Don't feel bad if you don't have 2,000 respondents. That's a different type of data with higher incidence of, variance than you would get with 20 that you've personally observed. So the N number is important here in counting number. So look for frequency, tabulation, respondent data. Next section is methodology. Here's where a lot of students tend to fall down in this project, is they don't do enough dense detail on their methodology. Someone must be able to come to your experiment who's never seen your experiment before to replicate this study. So you need to, in dense detail, this means very fine detail, who, what, where, when, how many times. How was the data collected and tabulated? Was it done on paper? Was it done on computer? Was it done on a phone? how did you actually collect your data? Where were you situated to collect this data? Where and how then, once you had the data, was it inputted and then analyzed? This is where you will describe putting it into Excel and what you actually did on Excel, which is critical that you've done your videos on correlation and so on, tutorials, so you can actually describe what actually it is you did. Then finally, with the methodology, what was done to create the charts and graphs and representations you have in your quantitative data. Make sure you outline the methodology. I would recommend you look back and make sure you probably, I think, have 3 paragraphs here. And it might be if it's not the largest section, certainly the second largest section of this project, except for the space of the graph stake. So methodology. Then you'll have a section on results. You want to show the output from Excel through a pie chart, a bar chart, and a scatter plot. I want you to have physical representations of what the data was. Now, I've had a lot of questions over the years about, well, what should I do? Which chart should I put where? Really, it's up to you to think through your own data of what type of chart best represents. You need to show all 3 types of charts. But it might be, for instance, if you did a survey with 5 different responses, that the best thing to do might be to do a bar chart with those 5 responses generalized. If it is that you've looked at a social phenomenon, for instance, how many people going through a stoplight, maybe a scatter plot where one axis is the stoplight, the other axis is going through over a period of time. Or it could be simply who goes through the entrance door or the exit door, one bar chart that has both of these. So in your charts and your representations, make sure you think through what's the best way for me to represent the data that I have. Then in Excel, label your chart. There's a label function. If you don't know how to do it, go into the tutorial and I'll show you the simple process of putting a label to your chart and then a short statement under the chart of about a sentence of what is this chart for. All right? So you have results. Then you have analysis. Ask yourself, what do the charts tell the viewer that is not familiar with my project? Describe in a few paragraphs how the charts address your research inquiry or your question, and how does the data answer it? Is it correct? Is it in between? Is it not correct? Or what does it say about the extremes of opinion on something? Or what is the moderation people have between the extremes? How do people enter through 2 doors? And what's the method for this? And this is a good way to put a little good phrase. This shows that, right? That's a nice third-party way, a neutral way of talking about the data. You don't want to go, I showed that. It's not about you. It's what does the data say? So it's third-person style. This shows that. Finally, to summarize, your quant paper presentation then first has a research inquiry question that you have of what you are studying and that you might have modified from your previous statement in a paragraph. The research field where you are studying in respect to quantitative. All right, so you might want to import your neighborhood walk stuff into here to some degree, but what were you studying? Where were you studying? Then your methodology, a larger section in dense detail that allows us to show and replicate your experiment. Then results include the 3 charts with the label and short statements about each one of the charts of what they are. Then analysis. What do the results show about the RQ or the research question? This shows that. And finally, at the very end, good practice, a concluding statement, a summary statement where you could reiterate this shows that. Now, most of these papers are about 5 pages, give or take long, including the charts in them. So they're not particularly long, but they have to be done correctly. What you will do with this paper, you'll essentially cut and paste it and drop it in to your final paper as your quant section, which will take almost a third of your paper right there. The charts themselves, you will take out of there and put into the appendix of your paper. So you do it well here, you save yourself time at the end. Keep it academic, keep it third person. I look forward to your quantitative research. Have a great day, everybody.